I got $200,000. And you're stuck taking care of a cat? Poor thing, you're basically a maid." My sister's mocking voice echoed through the funeral home. Our parents had both passed away years ago, leaving our grandmother as the matriarch of the family. She was the last pillar holding everything together. On the day her will was read, I sat quietly in my chair while the room buzzed with shock and confusion. In my lap rested her beloved cat, Miro. No one could have predicted that her will would cause such a rift between us. "My name is Stacy. I'm 41 and I work in administration at the local hospital. People often describe me as modest and quiet. My sister Kim, 2 years older than me, was the complete opposite. She's outgoing, confident, and has always been sharp and quick on her feet. Over the years, she built a successful business career and even appeared in the media. I'd grown used to being compared to her. While I never lived a life worth boasting about, I still had my own hopes and dreams. Some might say it was too late to chase them, but deep inside, there was always a small flame that hadn't gone out. I majored in biology at university and once considered becoming a nurse. But I gave that up when I got married, choosing instead to dedicate myself to supporting my husband. Still, a part of me never stopped longing to work in emergency care to help save lives. That longing resurfaced sharply when Grandma fell ill and I was powerless to do anything. That moment of helplessness left a deep mark in my heart. Only Grandma had always believed in me. My husband, Alex, and I had been married for nearly 10 years. He was a banker, the kind of man who cared deeply about appearances. His pursuit of success left little room for our home life, and I was left to manage everything alone. The distance between us had been growing for years. "You don't need to worry about a thing," he'd often say with a smile that felt more like a wall than comfort. The affection we once had was long gone. Sometimes he'd take me along to dinners with his friends, where I'd always end up in the corner seat. Whenever I tried to join the conversation, they'd casually change the subject, and I'd be left smiling silently. I mentioned a few times that I admired nurses and wanted to try that path, but he always cut me off, saying, "There's no need for that. Just taking care of the house and the kids is more than enough." At first I thought it was kindness, but at some point I realized it was control. I was beginning to feel suffocated. It happened just a few weeks ago. Grandma had collapsed while playing in the yard with Miro. By the time I rushed to the hospital, she was already weak, but when she saw me, she still smiled. "You're someone who can help others. Don't hold back. Walk your own path." Those were her last words to me. At that moment, I felt that Grandma was trying to entrust me with something. As she gently stroked Miro's fur, she closed her eyes and never opened them again. Her wake and funeral were held quietly at the local church. Kim wore an elegant black dress and greeted the mourners with practiced grace. While the rest of the family and relatives wept, I sat quietly with Miro, Grandma's beloved cat, resting gently in my lap. After the service, the family was gathered in a private room. In the tense silence, the lawyer in a dark suit pulled a handwritten will from a large envelope. Kim reclined on the sofa, legs crossed, smirking. "Obviously, I'll get the bulk of the inheritance. After all, I did everything for her." She said that loudly enough for everyone to hear. Next to her, Alex sat with his arms folded, feigning neutrality, but I saw the hunger in his eyes. For him, this was about recovering an investment. I sat a little apart, gently stroking Miro's back. Grandma's scent still clung faintly to his fur, and I had to fight back the tears. "It's okay, Miro. There must be a reason for this." When I whispered, he nuzzled into my hand, as if to comfort me. Then, the lawyer began reading. "To my granddaughter Kim, I leave a gift of $200,000 in appreciation." Kim muttered, That's it? Well, I suppose it makes sense, considering the way she lived. At the moment the lawyer read those words, she briefly furrowed her brow, but then quickly shrugged and let out a dismissive laugh through her nose. But when the lawyer moved on to my portion, the atmosphere shifted. To my granddaughter Stacy, I entrust my beloved cat Miro. What? Alex's mouth dropped open in disbelief, but only for a second. His expression quickly twisted with contempt. A cat? Are you serious? His voice dripped with scorn as he glared at me. What the hell are you supposed to do with that? What use is some worthless animal? His voice dripped with mockery, and his cold, condescending gaze cut straight through me. Beside him, Kim let out a snort of laughter, as if taking his anger as some kind of personal victory. You really are pathetic, inheriting a cat? You're like a maid. I was speechless. I clutched Miro tightly in my arms. Miro, would you still want to live with someone like me? In response, he quietly pressed his face into my hand. I was hurt and humiliated. I even asked the lawyer to double-check the paperwork, over and over. But there was no mistake. This was the truth, and I had no choice but to accept it. Later, after we returned home, Alex turned to me and said coldly, "You have no reason to stay here anymore. No inheritance? Then take that thing and get out." His words hit like a slap. I trembled as I held Miro closer. At first, I couldn't even process what he meant. To be thrown out over money? I never thought he could be that small of a man. But I was tired of the coldness, the silence, the dismissal. "All right," I said. My voice was faint, but I had nothing else to say. For a while, we just stared at each other in silence. Then I slowly reached for my suitcase, packed what I needed, and walked toward the door. Without looking back, I stepped out of the house, feeling nothing but the cold stares on my back. The door slammed shut behind me with a dull thud. Looking back now, that sound marked the beginning of a new life for both me and Miro. With nothing but a small suitcase and Miro cradled in my arms, I made my way to the quiet countryside town where my grandmother had lived for decades. The view outside the train window was nothing like the noise of the city. It was calm, nostalgic, and peaceful. Miro, nestled in the carrier on my lap, glanced up at me from time to time. "It's going to be okay, Miro. I know it will be. We're going to have peaceful days from now on." Grandma's house stood in a quiet residential area about 10 minutes on foot from the station, a weathered wooden home surrounded by a garden in full bloom. When I opened the door, the familiar scent of her presence gently stirred my memories. This is it, our new beginning. Miro, let's do our best together. Miro let out a soft, approving meow, as if to say he understood. As I walked around the house, I found traces of her life in every corner, old photos, letters, and memories etched into the furniture and the walls. Then something caught my eye, an old shed in the corner of the garden. From the outside, the shed looked aged and worn, but it had a strange presence, like it was hiding something. I noticed Miro glancing in its direction again and again, clearly curious. "What is it, Miro?" As I approached, he patted over and scratched lightly at the wall. Inside, the shed felt even smaller than it appeared from the outside. Something felt off. I scanned the walls and floor carefully, and when I stepped around the back, something caught my eye, a faint outline of a door, half hidden in the weeds. A hidden door? I reached out, and to my surprise, the knob turned easily. It wasn't locked. When I slowly opened it, I was stunned to find a large, heavy-looking safe sitting quietly inside. It was clearly locked tight, with no visible way to open it. I began searching the house. Eventually, in the back of a drawer in Grandma's study, I found a single envelope. My name Stacy was written in her graceful handwriting. Inside was a letter, written in the same soft script I'd known all my life. The guardian of the safe shall be Stacy, caretaker of my beloved cat Miro. Miro's favorite collar is special. Please take care not to lose it. Use what's inside the safe for what you truly desire. I trust that you'll know what that is when the time comes. I stood frozen for a moment, rereading that passage, Miro's favorite collar, over and over again in my mind. Could it be? I gently lifted Miro into my arms and reached for the collar around his neck. Attached was a small charm that jingled lightly with a delicate sound. I removed it and placed it in my palm. There was a small groove on the underside, shaped exactly like a key. You led me here, didn't you? Thank you, Miro. I returned to the hidden room in the shed and stood before the safe. I slipped the key into the lock and turned it gently. Click. The safe door creaked open. Inside were rows of carefully arranged wooden boxes. When I opened one, I found a finely crafted antique watch nestled inside. Each piece radiated a timeless beauty, clearly not just some hobby collection. At the very back, there was another envelope. Inside was an official appraisal document, signed by a certified accountant. Antique watch collection, total estimated value, $500,000. My eyes widened, and I read the number again, slowly. Then, in a separate small box, I found several heavy gold bars, real gold. I was speechless. I looked up at the ceiling and whispered softly, "Grandma, you were teaching me what real value means, weren't you?" Miro let out a single, contented meow at my feet. I carefully examined each watch in the collection, wondering what had led Grandma to entrust this to me. She had written, "Use it for what you truly desire." And I knew, deep down, what that was. I wanted to help women who, like I once had, lived in fear, trapped in relationships built on control or abuse. A mismatch in values with a partner, a kind of pain that's hard to see from the outside and even harder to speak up about. I had once felt that same helplessness, unable to speak. But now, thanks to the treasure Grandma had hidden, I had a way to reach them. I selected several pieces from the collection and partnered with a trustworthy auction house. Each of the antique watches, prized as art pieces, was sold at a high price. With part of the funds, I founded a non-profit organization to support victims of domestic abuse. At first, I was navigating in the dark. But I renovated an old outbuilding on Grandma's property, once just a storage shed, and turned it into a modest office. It stood right beside the hidden shed, just steps through the backyard. Using the warmth of the house Grandma once filled with love, I created a place where others could find safety too. For the first time in my life, I had something I had built with my own hands. We began with a simple local support center. Then came the emergency shelters, available even late at night. Then legal support, trauma counselors, and community outreach. One step at a time, with care and patience, I built something real. When a local paper ran an article on our work, people took notice. Lawyers, nurses, and other professionals began offering to help. Our network grew steadily, one connection at a time. And the words I heard from the women we helped, that's what keeps me going. I'm so glad you were there. I found the courage because you showed me the way. I no longer live in anyone's shadow. The safe Grandma left behind, it wasn't just wealth. It was the key to my new life. Miro still sits quietly in the corner of the office, watching over me. But what he sees now is no longer the old version of me. He sees the woman I've become, driven by purpose, chasing dreams, saving lives. A few months later, my NPO was gaining recognition in the community. Donations increased, and more people came seeking help. The days were busy, and nights even busier, but I felt more fulfilled than I ever had. One afternoon, just as I finished a staff meeting and was reviewing documents, a loud voice rang from the front door. "Stacy, I know you're in there. Come out." The office door burst open. Standing there with her hair disheveled and sunglasses pushed up onto her forehead was my sister. Gone was the polished smile, the glamorous aura, none of it remained. I rose slowly and greeted her calmly. "What's wrong, Kim?" "What's wrong? That's what you're asking me." She stormed across the room, her heels clacking against the floor, then hissed under her breath. You kept that safe a secret, didn't you?" I looked into it. "I know what Grandma left you. The watches, the gold bars, they are worth millions." I furrowed my brow but remained composed. For the record, there was a regular safe in the office that my team and I used for daily financials. But the hidden door behind the shed, that was something I had told no one about. Not even my staff. It was part of my nature to keep certain things private. And how exactly is that any of your business? Grandma named me, Miro's guardian, as the sole custodian. It's all in the will, remember? How is it my business? I was the one who cared for her more. That should have gone to me. Her voice cracked with frustration, and for the first time, I saw fatigue in her eyes. Something must have gone terribly wrong in her business. She no longer had the poised, calculating confidence I remembered. "Please, Stacy, just a little. My company, we're running out of funds." Her voice trembled. Hearing Kim say please startled me. But I could see it clearly now. This wasn't a vulnerability. It was a performance. I could tell the difference. "Grandma said to use it for what I truly want," I replied, looking her straight in the eyes. "What you want is money. What I want is the power to help others." I think Grandma understood that difference. "That's why I can't give it to you." Kim clenched her jaw, then glared at me with narrowed eyes. "This isn't over. I will get what's mine. I'm not going to let you win." And with that, she spun on her heel and stormed out. The door slammed behind her, returning the room to a heavy silence. Miro emerged from under the desk and curled around my feet. I reached down and stroked his soft head, exhaling slowly. "I think it is going to end soon. Things won't end well for her, given the way she does things." I no longer feared her. A few nights after her outburst, I was alone at the office, catching up on emails from those seeking help. Miro was curled up on the sofa, asleep until suddenly his ears twitched. In the silence, I heard something faint. I glanced out the window. There was movement in the dark. Suspicious, I headed out to the shed. A shadow moved toward the back, the hidden door. I held my breath and watched carefully. Bathed in the moonlight, I recognized the figure. Kim? Wearing gloves, she was trying to pry the door open. I rushed forward. "Stop! What are you doing? You can't go in there." Startled, she turned, but instead of stopping, she dashed inside. I chased after her. At the back of the shed, in the hidden room, Kim was pulling at the safe. She tried to force the handle open, yanking it with all her strength. "Wait!" Before I could stop her, the weight shifted. Arg! With a loud crash, the safe tipped over, trapping her leg beneath it. Ouch, my leg. I immediately called an ambulance and covered her with a blanket while we waited. Her face was pale, twisted in pain. The woman who once had everything was sitting broken on the floor of a dusty shed. At the hospital, scans confirmed multiple fractures and deep lacerations. But that wasn't all. She had broken through a locked door and attempted to open the safe. The police launched an investigation. Kim was formally arrested on charges of trespassing and attempted theft. Soon after, her company began to unravel. News of her arrest destroyed investors' trust, and internal scandals surfaced. Stock prices plummeted. Key partners withdrew. The business collapsed. Her husband also filed for divorce, stating he couldn't be part of it anymore. Media outlets picked up the story, the fall of a former star. She lost everything. As for me, I sat quietly in the living room of Grandma's house, Miro purring softly on my lap as the fire flickered in the hearth. You were right, Grandma. Real value isn't something you can see on the surface. Miro let out a soft meow, as if in agreement. The reflection in his eyes was no longer of a woman who lived under someone else's roof. A few days later, I received a letter. I smiled bitterly when I saw the name on the envelope. Alex. The man who had thrown me out of his house. What could he possibly want now? Inside was a handwritten note in that familiar, self-important scrawl. I'm sorry for everything. I've done a lot of thinking since you left. I was emotional back then. I made a mistake. I had no idea you'd do so well for yourself. I'm not angry anymore. Come home. Let's talk. We can start over. Not angry anymore? That condescending tone, some things never change. It was infuriating. He must have panicked after realizing the woman he kicked out is now the head of an NPO, making a real impact in the community. And with my sister's scandal all over the news, he probably found out I possess significant assets. It's painfully obvious he just wants to keep some kind of connection to me. I contacted our NPO's legal representative, Heather, our attorney. I'd like to move forward with the divorce proceedings. There's no need for direct contact. A few days later, Heather sent Alex the divorce form and official notice. He worked as a senior analyst at a major investment bank and took great pride in always being part of the so-called winners. For someone like him, being treated with contempt by a housewife who stayed at home like me was something he simply couldn't tolerate. As expected, he tried to push back, complaining that the decision was too sudden, that I hadn't given him a chance to talk. But Heather replied, cool and composed. Stacy has made it clear that she no longer wishes to have any further contact. Any additional attempts to approach her will be subject to legal action. And with that one sentence, it was over. I took a deep breath and looked up at the sky. Now I'm finally, truly free. Not long after, multiple former subordinates came forward to accuse Alex of workplace harassment. He was dismissed from the investment bank. Last I heard, he was working as a cashier at a supermarket in a small town. His friends who once admired his title quietly vanished from his life. But I no longer felt anything for him, not anger, not sadness, not even pity. After our divorce was finalized and my heart finally began to feel at peace, I found myself revisiting an old dream, the one I had buried long ago. I wanted to work in emergency care. It was a dream I had once chased in my younger days, but ultimately let go of. I remembered Grandma's voice, just before she passed, smiling weakly from her hospital bed. You're someone who can help others. Don't hold back. Walk your own path. Her words stayed with me. A job that touches people's lives. A person who stands beside fear and pain. This time I felt I was finally ready to pursue it again. But to do so, I would need to step away from the NPO. I gathered the team, my trusted staff, who had been with me since day one, and held a quiet meeting in the conference room. Thanks to all of you, we've come this far. I'm deeply grateful. But I want to chase my own dream again. I've decided to pursue emergency care, and that means stepping away from our NPO operations for a while. I'm leaving the organization in your hands." The staff were momentarily surprised, but soon they all nodded in understanding. Heather said, "If anyone can save lives, it's you, Stacy. We've got this. We support your dream." Tears welled up in my eyes. For the first time, I truly understood what it meant to pass on trust. I enrolled in a medical training program in the city and began preparing for national certification. It wasn't easy, trying to make up for more than 10 years away from the field. But I wasn't the same woman anymore. I had strength, and I believed in myself. 1 year later, I earned my qualification as an emergency care worker. I began working at an emergency hospital in the city. The sound of ambulance sirens, the beeping of monitors, the rise and fall of vital signs. In the chaos, I had to stay calm always. But in this place face to face with life itself, I felt alive. At night, I'd return to my small room in the hospital dorms, where Miro would be waiting. He has become older, no longer as energetic, but he still stayed by my side. "I'm home, Miro. Made it through another day." He blinked slowly in response, as if he understood everything. Then one day, months later, after finishing a night shift, I stepped out of the staff nap room, groggy but alert. And there, sitting quietly on a waiting room sofa, was a silhouette I hadn't expected to see. Black coat, designer handbag. But gone was the arrogance, the polished veneer. "Kim?" She stood slowly when I called her name, her smile awkward and faint. "I was hoping I'd see you here. I'm sorry just showing up like this." For a moment, I was speechless. I never thought she'd come here of all places. "Can we talk? Just for a little while?" We moved to the staff break room. I handed her a paper cup of coffee. She exhaled deeply and finally spoke. "It wasn't until I lost everything that I understood how strong you have been. How deeply Grandma believed in you. I get it now, it was never about money. It's about real value. Can you forgive me?" I looked her straight in the eye. Pain doesn't disappear so easily. But she had made it here, in her own way. This was her courage. I nodded slowly. "It's okay, Kim. I've moved forward, and if you're trying to do the same, maybe we can be sisters again." A single tear slid down her cheek. "Thank you, Stacy." That day, over cups of coffee and shared memories, we began the slow, careful process of repairing a broken bond. Later that evening, I returned to my room, where Miro waited for me in the window's golden light. I looked up at Grandma's portrait and smiled. "Did you see that, Grandma? We're finally a family again." Miro let out a soft meow from the windowsill. And in that sound I could almost hear her voice from beyond the clouds. "Well done, my girl."